I'm a little lacking in space today. I'm kind of surrounded by tripods. Primarily in this video, I want to discuss Sony's potentially upcoming cameras, because we were only assuming that they are on the way. But I wanted to go through some of the features that I hope that we're going to see in these upcoming cameras, or maybe in the not too distant future. Things with the current generation cameras that are slightly frustrating, things I would like to see changed. But rather than just a talking head video of me going through all that, I figured I'd do it whilst I'm doing a little photography project. I'm going to call it a project, not a tutorial, because to say tutorial implies that I know what I'm actually doing, which in this case I kind of don't. This afternoon I was just doing a little bit of painting with the kids, and I was mixing up some colours in these little pots, and I noticed as I was stirring the paints together, you got some very interesting patterns as the paint started to kind of blend. So I thought if I could do that in a more controlled way with toothpicks, so I can get a more delicate spiral and I can control the patterns properly, I might be able to get some rather interesting looking macro-y type shots. And yes, macro-y is the accepted term there. At least it is in my book. Now I am going to try and keep this as simplistic as possible. Firstly, for a question of space, obviously, but secondly, I also want to kind of demonstrate and show you that it hopefully will be possible to get some rather interesting photos without a ton of gear. So I figured I'd just, play around with this, take some photos, see what I can get whilst I'm going through and discussing the camera features with you. So what colours to do first? I think some red and some white. And blue, sod it. So all I'm going to do is just a blob of red, blob of white. I feel like Neil Buchanan on Art Attack. Please tell me I'm not the only person that used to watch that. That was my childhood, that. God, the amount of PVA glue I went through as a kid. So I think what I spotted is if you start to blend them together, and some gentle brush strokes while I'm at it. So let's discuss some Sony features, because at this point, God knows what this must look like to you guys. So first off, in terms of cameras, I think obviously we had the A7R4 quite recently, so makes sense that the next up would be either an A7 IV or the A7S2 replacement, whatever the hell that turns out to be. Now, in terms of features for those, I think we'll see an increase in resolution on the S line. Obviously, the first and second generations were 12 megapixels. Given that Panasonic are doing 6K full-frame video, Canon R5 is supposed to be doing 8K full-frame video, it makes sense that Sony advance on from just doing 4K. So I think the S will see a bump in resolution, maybe to 24 megapixels, to allow it to do straight 6K recording rather than 6K downsample to 4K. Still way too high. Now in terms of the A7 IV, if we then see an increase in resolution on the S, I think we'll see an increase in resolution of the A7 IV as well. Because if the S has gone to 24 megapixels, it seems redundant to have the A7 IV at 24 megapixels and then have a huge jump up to the A7R4 at 60. Especially since the R5 is going to be going up to 45 megapixels, I think we'll probably see the A7 IV go up to maybe 36, 40 megapixels, somewhere around there. Half a second at f8. Chunk of it in focus. Stop breathing, you. I think I'll go nuts and we'll put a blob of yellow square in the middle of that, and then we'll start to mix that in. We'll see what that does. I think for all the camera shooting speeds, still going to remain at 10 frames a second. I don't see any reason why they would change it. The R stayed exactly the same. That looks like complete crap, but we'll go with it anyway. I think they'll make the S3/4 6K recording, but I think they'll keep the A7 IV at 4K, but I'm hoping maybe they'll increase the frame rate. Wishful thinking, and I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be nice to have 4K 60 in one of these. Should have used my logic here, shouldn't I? Why drop the camera to the paint when you could just put the paint up to the camera? Okay, word of the wise for anyone wanting to try this out for themselves: don't mix them too much. Little bit of mixing. You just want small blobs of paint, little bit of mixing together so that they still keep the majority of the colour, and you just get streaks going between the paints. Once you push it that little bit too much, it seems to all just mix together and change colour, and it looks crap, basically. I'm hoping also that the A7 IV gets a higher resolution viewfinder and screen. Maybe the viewfinder out of the old R3 now that the R4's gone up in resolution. That'd work for me. There's a couple of things I'd like to see changed as well, just overall usability, interface, etc. Firstly, touchscreen. Now I know not everyone's a fan of a touchscreen, and fair enough, it's all personal preference, but there are some people that really do like a touchscreen, and there are times where I think a touchscreen would have been useful for me with this, and obviously didn't happen. The stupid thing is that it is a touchscreen, but it's only a touchscreen for touch to focus, but none of the menus or anything are touchscreen compatible, which is an annoyance. If I want to jump over to a particular tab, like the third or fourth tab across on the menu, I can't just tap where I want, make it nice and easy like you do with your phone these days. You've got to actually scroll across, and that's a bit of a pain in the hole. So fully fledged touchscreen, I would really like to see. But on the topic of video, I think the biggest thing that needs changing with these cameras is the file naming structure on it, because at least on the A7 III, it's freaking bonkers. I'm assuming they've not changed it on the R4, but let me know if they have. But on the 3rd gen cameras at least, they're still running a pretty traditional sequential setup. So you can set your own 3-symbol prefix at the start of it. So I think by standard it's DSC. I've changed it, so on this it's A7 III, and on my A64 it's A64. So I know straight away looking back at any of my pictures whether I took it with the A7 III or the 6400. And then it also means that if they happen to end up in roughly the same sequence, there's not going to be any clash. So you get your 3-character prefix at the start and then 4 digits at the end. So it starts at 0000 and it runs sequentially till 99999, and then it goes back to 0000. But with the video, everything is C0001 sequentially until you then change memory cards. And the moment you change memory cards, it doesn't carry on the sequence from wherever it's up to in the same way that your images do. It starts back at 0001. So it just jumps to the earliest possible sequence that it can on that particular memory card. Now that's not a pain in the hole in the camera as such. Where it does become a problem, however, is when you're then copying all your files onto a computer. Whenever I'm recording, like this video for example, I'll make a folder on my hard drive for that particular video. So for this, I'll probably call it, like pissing around with paint or something. And then I'll copy all of the relevant video files into that folder. Now at the minute, in case you haven't noticed, I've got 2 cameras recording at the same time. I've got the 6400 filming me here, and I've got a 6500 showing you what's going on down here. At least I hope it is. But both of these, I've formatted the memory cards before I started. So both of them are recording video files at the same time, labelled C0001. Which means that when I come to put them on the computer later, I'm going to copy one memory card into that folder, and the moment I try and copy the next one, it's going to try and overwrite and replace the first camera. So that means I either have to rename the first file that I copy in after it's done before I try and copy the second, or I then have to make a subfolder, a secondary folder, and put the second camera in there. And it becomes an absolute pain in the arse. So naming structure is definitely a big nuisance with this camera that I really hope they fix. Like I said, I don't think they will make that change because, at least to the best of my knowledge, they've not made that change on the A7R4. And if they've not changed it on the R4, they're very unlikely to change it on the 4. Another thing I really want to see, which for me is just, it's a nuisance from both of my cameras at the moment, 6400 and the A7 III, is 4K face tracking with proxy recording. Like at the minute, I'm using the A6400 to film this. I'm shooting in 4K and I've got face tracking on, and it's working brilliantly because occasionally the camera's blocking my view. It's not trying to focus on the camera, it's staying locked to me. At least I hope it is. But I can't use face tracking if I've got proxy recording enabled. Now, proxy recording makes editing afterwards so much easier because you're not having to try and render and load full 4K files in Premiere. You can just load 720 files and it makes the thing run so much faster. So having proxy recording is a real bonus, but I can't shoot this video without face tracking, which means I can't have the proxy recording. And this thing's the same. What's really annoying is the fact that with the A7 III, you can't have face tracking and proxy recording at the same time, but you can have one or the other and recording video to 2 memory cards at once. So I can't have 4K at 60 megabits a second with face tracking and 4K going to just one memory card, but I can have 4K at 100 megabits a second with face tracking or proxy recording going to 2 memory cards at the same time. Something does not add up there. But I think that's it. I've kind of ran out of pots. But definitely some interesting looking outcomes here. Like I said, this was more just a little bit of a mess around, experimenting with this whilst I was babbling on about the rest of this. So I wasn't expecting miracles. Especially when they're cropped in. If you look at the uncropped image, you can kind of see around the edge of the cup where it's not able to quite get close enough. Probably to completely fill the frame and not see the cup would have either required a macro lens or more extension tubes. I think I've lost me 25mm extension tube, or a bigger area to shoot with. So probably if you use like a plate, maybe spread the paint over a bigger area, that might work. But definitely a potential experiment for you guys to have a mess around with if you're, like me, stuck at home and going slightly crazy. But let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts on the Sony cameras are, both what you think the next generation cameras are going to have in terms of features, and anything on their current cameras that you would like to see changed. And also let me know if you're going to give the painting a go, or more, let me know how it goes. But if you have any other questions or queries, guys, the comment box is down below. While you're down there, if you haven't already, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.